Hello and welcome to the BuildASoil YouTube channel. Today it's episode 27, season 3. This is it. This is the last episode. We're giving you the final details and we're closing the chapter. Next we'll be talking about season 4 and I'm really looking forward to it. It seems like it gets more exciting each time. Getting the numbers together, I want to go over them with you. They're not perfectly accurate. It's not like we did this in one go like we did last time when we had the trim party. A lot of this was me keeping notes of what I took at it. We had a customer come in, it was a buddy, I'd like snap a branch off the drying rack. I had jars that I took on vacation. And so take this with a grain of salt. I've threatened to do testing in the past. I really like just testing it because that's what I do for myself. Like I'm never gonna send off my plants to the lab at home to decide what a keeper is. I just pick my favorite. As far as breaking it down, I didn't do like this much trim and this much top nugs and this much lower nugs, and I would prefer to do that had I had the time. This is just a lump sum, everything we got off the plant when I was done doing a pretty fast trim because it was a lot of weight and I was leaving town and I wanted to get put away. Mainly because quality is the most important. If you drag this phase out wanting to be too perfect and you end up ruining the dry or the cure because you leave it somewhere too long when it's not in its final state in the jar. So I've got some of them here. There were so many different plants this last round, I don't have them all. I think I have most of the keepers except for the Pocololo because that keeper wasn't the biggest plant. There was 9 of them and the average was 3 to 4 ounces of plant in that bed, which we'll go over, which led to a great yield by the way. But the number 6 is really interesting too. Like I like all of them. I'm gonna still keep the number 8, but when I brought this one in, people were like, what is that? That one's very interesting as far as the odor. So let me just bring it back. I'll open these in a second. Let's go through quadrant by quadrant. Quadrant 1 was the least efficient, meaning we had half of a grow light. We didn't use most of the space. And then we only had the earth boxes and I was going to have 3 earth boxes there. We decided to take 1 earth box out, put it in a separate 4x4 tent so we could do 18 hours instead of 12. And that ended up being the straw that broke the camel's back. Like it was just too much for me to tend to. We didn't set up the environment right. The sun was shining in from when we opened the door and artificially heating that environment. So in any case, it's important to pay attention to the details. Even someone who's experienced, if you've got a busy life and you just jump in, throw an extra in there, sometimes it can be too much. So pay attention to what you can handle, big part of the process. But now there was only 2 earth boxes in quadrant 1. One of them, if you remember, we had one of the mountain trop cookies we had to pull. So we only had 1 plant in 1 earth box, 2 plants that were the autoflower from Daz in the other earth box. And I will say that even though it wasn't the biggest yield, the 2 autoflowers yielded great. They did a really good job. I think they would have yielded even more had they been under 18 hours of light. But we got 6.6 ounces off the 2 autoflowers in 1 earth box. And they were tall, they had good nugs, but I think what made up most of that is that the nugs had some grease, like some heft to them. And I think that they did tally up a little bit more weight. The mountain trop cookies was pretty big yield for how small it was. It was like rock hard nugs, almost to the point where I didn't really like this pheno nearly as much as the last one, 3.7 ounces. And the last mountain trop cookies was really fuely. This one was very tropical. And for whatever reason, I just don't like that as much. I like the smell, but I didn't like the taste. And then because it was the last to harvest, I didn't do quite as good of a job, really slow drying it. So the auto was my favorite out of quadrant 1, the strawberry milk and cookies. And I tell you what, I think I went to that one almost the most out of all of them, mainly because it had a unique fruity and it had the fuel and it was just so ridiculously frosted, really nice texture. So again, very impressed with the autos. So total, quadrant 1, 10.3 ounces. Equals 291 grams. We had about 350 watts. I'd have to double check on that LED. So that's about 0.83 grams per watt, which, GPW real quick doesn't tell the whole story. Obviously you could veg for 6 months and then get yourself a really high grams per watt. We did almost no veg time here. It was like direct from seed. And I'd like to hit 1 gram per watt kind of as a minimum. And if I go above that, that's really phenomenal. But 1 gram per watt is very efficient in my opinion. That means you're doing a great job. And we were at 0.83. Had I had that other earth box in there, I mean, we had a lot of wasted space. It would have been very easy to hit, over that 1 gram per watt, especially if I ran both of those autos with the same yield. Good one. Quad 2, NL5. Number 4 was my keeper. I actually also liked the number 6. And interestingly, we didn't get a good test run out of the number 2 and the number 5 because they got cannibalized. It was almost like the 4 corners ate up the insides. There were 6 plants there. All the NL5s were kind of nice. But the number 4 had this bag appeal that was next level. And it had, like, you cracked the jar, and I think I've mentioned this, and Miles really liked it right away, but it has this like creamy, yogurty berryness that's sweet, that doesn't, it's not like a harsh, sugary kind, and it's something different from that normal sweetness, and I like it. I really like the NL5 number 4 that we kept. I don't think it's ever gonna be like my absolute favorite. I liked it surprisingly enough where I really wanna give it a better run and see what she can do. And so maybe that's on the table for season 4. Maybe I'll bring it home, not positive. Let's get to the numbers. Quadrant 2, we did 26.2 ounces. Out of a 3x3 bed, I think we could have maxed out that space a little better, having a larger bed. Also, had the plants been a little more uniform in size, some better scrogging, we could have done more yield, but still really good. 743 grams, 1.23 grams per watt. That was a 600 watt cob setup. I think that we could have done better trellising, and had we had more even size, like if we had run this NL5 4, all of those as the number 4 instead of from seed, I think we'd go up in the GPW as well, because that one was definitely a yielder out of the bunch. Okay, quad 3, the Pacololo, the 1. This one was the biggest yielding quadrant, and it's no surprise to me in the sense that not only were the genetics good, I didn't expect them to be a big yielder, like as far as genetics go, but I did expect the quadrant to be a big yielder because we put up a 4x4 bed. It had more soil than any other quadrant, and we used more of the footprint than any other quadrant. And we had 9 plants, the highest plant count. So they only had to hit a few ounces to make a big difference. And I don't have the average here, but I think it was closer to 4 ounces. Some of them were a little bit smaller, and some were significantly bigger and heavier and kind of added to that average. But the Pacololo 1, we're keeping the number 8. We really like that one. I'd probably like to run some more of those seeds. Kind of surprisingly so, like meaning I knew I was gonna like Coots seeds, but I knew they were also gonna be old school and a little bit different. So after spending a lot of time with it, I came to really like the flower and the cerebral effect that it has. I think it's a really special, unique high, like the most different odor out of all of them. You know, Dean mentioned he liked one of them, was one of his favorite odors out of all the jars. I've had other people that are like, what is that? And so there's something there. And I just really appreciate Coot for sharing it with us so that I could have something unique. I always talk about unique is what I'm after. Flavors and unique flavors. And I was smoking one of them at my house the other night and I was like, Coot's right. Not only do I get that like the fruit that I was talking about, but I was like, it is mango. Mango in there, it's crazy. So let's go over the numbers. Pacololo 1, 36.3 ounces. 4x4 bed, lots of soil, 1,029 grams. That puts us at 1.44 grams per watt, which is really good. And I think if we run all one cut, get some uniform, do some trellising, I mean, that one could really stack in there. But I also think that it's evidence that, hey, running a higher plant count and larger amount of soil and maximizing your footprint is a better way to be energy efficient and to produce more flower for the light that you're using. And last, certainly not least, quadrant 4, the Beefcake D. I think overall this is one of the most impressive. I just expected it to be good, so I kind of already had high expectations. But the ability to have flower that smells that good, tastes that good, don't have any trim work, puts out massive amount of yield, the easiest to veg, always happy and easy. I just feel like I could give this cut to somebody and they could crush it. It had the Chem D in it. We've got but this is the number 2. Just been smoking on this, so it's not complete, but it's all good. I'll pull one out. And you can tell even like from here, the spear shape, and while it was growing, it looked more like Chem D. And when I open this one in particular, it's just got this funk, this fuel that I really look for. But for whatever reason, I like the way that the number 1 burns, and I really like the flavor of it. And it's surprising because they both have that fuelness to it, but I will say neither of them have that over-the-top grease coating that I'm looking for, and I really feel like I could find it in that pack. But the reason why I chose the number 1 instead of this one is I already have the halitosis from last round, super strong, super greasy, has the Chem D in it. I like the number 1 for my keeper because it has a mixture of flavors that I look for in there and taste, and it burns so easy. Like it's so not harsh, it burned white right away, it tastes good. So I think that I'm gonna keep that number 1, not the number 2. In fact, I am keeping the number 1, not the number 2. And we'll go over the numbers. The number 1 did yield more, even though it was a smaller plant, had much bigger nugs, but the other one was very, very close. Smaller nugs, but heavier and taller plant. 14.2 ounces off the 1, 13.7 off the 2, 27.9 total. And out of all of the bags, since I didn't do a very good job trimming, the Beefcake D comes out shining as all of its like top, like usable flower, even the lowers. Like it just, if I showed you that, you'd be like, oh, there's 27.9 ounces. Where if I showed you like the Pacalola 1, had a little bit more leaf on it and I didn't spend that much time, you'd kind of be like 36.3 ounces. Well, some of that's going to be lowers and trim and stuff. I'm like, man, yeah, but that was the yield. Where the Beefcake D, it's like, what you see is what you get. So really, really like that when it comes to keeping one. Grams, 791. Grams per watt, 1.11. So Quadrant 2 did better than Quadrant 4, but Quadrant 4 was 230 gallons. We used like half the space and twice the light, and we didn't maximize it at all. So being above 1, while not even maximizing the space, was killer to me. In fact, Quadrant 2, we used a 3x3, but we used more space, and that was second place. Quadrant 3 was number 1, 1.44 grams per watt, and we actually used all the space, and we had more plants, and we had more soil. So I guess what this has revealed is that there's almost, there's no replacement for displacement, as they say with motors. The bigger the engine, the more the horsepower. Trying to trick it with turbos and superchargers and stuff is not necessarily the same kind of raw power. And so I feel like putting a big bed of soil gets you big yield and quality, and you don't have to try and be like really expert on soil chemistry and feeding plants and all the other stuff. So take it for what it's worth. I really enjoyed growing all these. We got the yield numbers. But let me go through real quick. Quadrant 1, we got 291 grams. Quad 2, 743 grams. Quadrant 3, 1,029 grams. Quadrant 4, 791 grams. I think that gives us an overall grams per watt of 1.15 when I did it on average. And that was pretty good considering some of the quadrants weren't really efficiently run. 6.29 pounds total. So, a 10 by 10, and even if you're at a pound a month, 2 cycles a year in a 10 by 10. It's easy to keep clean. You can walk into it. You get more herb than you need. So I really feel like it's a maximum optimal size for like a home grow situation. Certainly you can go smaller if you don't have as big of a habit, but overall, stoked. 100.7 ounces. We're gonna try and do better next time as always, but for me, it's quality, not quantity. And you'll notice that BuildASoil is more focused on filling the jars with flavors than it is trying to max out that yield. And it's not even fun for me to max yield. It becomes commercial. Like if I was to have to fill that whole 10 by 10 wall to wall and like crawl in there and have one cut that was the biggest yielder, I think it would take away from it for me. I really enjoy having different things going on, but you do your grow how you want. If you've got questions about the BuildASoil way, about what we did, we're happy to help, happy to answer questions like always. So things that I might do differently. We learn lessons every time we do this, and I think that an important part of the garden is it's a big teacher in our lives. And it teaches that you reap what you sow, right? You can't just expect to get something that you didn't actually put the effort in for. It also teaches us that we have to be disciplined on a daily routine to be able to get the results. And so from what we learned from this season in particular was that it's difficult to keep up a garden when you're really busy. Busy time of year, growth here at BuildASoil, 60 employees, at a point where we were growing massively every year, just trying random new ideas all the time. We couldn't even keep up. Now we have processes and paperwork and hiring and firing and like all the stuff real businesses have to go through. And so running this last season in the throes of all of that, I didn't clean the tent as often as I'd like. We didn't trellis the plants nearly as well as I wanted to. And we didn't get into some of the detail along the way that I'd like to. I think one of the things that we noticed right away is that popping those seeds in the earth box, 12-12 from seed, I would have vegged them just a little longer. It would have turned out to probably be less stressful for the plants, and it would have given them a better result as far as the earth box goes. Also, I learned autos have come a long way. Super impressed with them. I might do 1 auto per earth box next time, but I think 2 still worked pretty well. And I like it when they do go through their food, like there's not a lot left over. And then the 4x4 tent goes along with lesson 1 that I mentioned. Hey, if you're busy and you're putting a lot on your plate, just really make sure you have the discipline to follow through. And I gotta tell you, there's times where I knew I should have tended to that 4x4 a little more, but I'd already done the most important part, done the 10 by 10. I'd peek in the 4x4 and be like, man, I really should put a better exhaust system in here and make sure that we're dialing this in. And I'm just like, dude, I don't have time, family, everything else that's so important in life. There's always priorities. And sometimes we have to really address those priorities. Season 4, it's not gonna be worth it for me. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna do less plants, and I'm not gonna do that extra 4x4 tent, but we are gonna do the breeding. And so because that's an extra variable, I really just wanna make sure that we go back to something slightly simpler. It's almost like we're getting more and more complicated each season. I wanna make sure that we keep it simple so that I can really knock it out of the park for you guys. Also, the next thing is, I knew I had a vacation coming a long time ahead of time, and I was really trying to time it. I ended up having to harvest not early, but like all at once instead of really stagnant like I might have. And then the dry room wasn't quite as cool as it could have been in the hottest time of year with the air conditioner. So I probably would have tested my dry room first a little bit more. And then I was having to come in on Sundays to empty the reservoir from the dehumidification that was happening from the air conditioner, so that could have been a little bit better. And then when we were done and I had to leave town, it was like a mad race the weekend before we were leaving town. Not only the animals and the farm and the business, but trying to figure out how to get all that stuff tubbed up, jarred up right before I left town. I think I put a little bit too much on my plate. I get it, kind of a normal habit for me. But I'll tell you, my lesson that I'm learning right now in my life at home, both here and at work, is that there's no shortcut to getting that organization and discipline. And I've mentioned that, but I mean, like, even in my garage, in the tool chest, the tools are in the right spot. So that when I need to do something, it's faster. Like, all those things make a difference where I'm actually enjoying free time in life instead of being like putting out fires. And if you don't learn that lesson, the garden will teach you that faster than anywhere in life. There's just gonna be a point where you decided it would be fun to pop 3 packs of seeds, and then you realize that you don't have 3 hours to transplant them, but you spent $100 on each pack and you just don't even know what to do because you have a commitment that night. This will teach you to prioritize. And so I think that all in all, I've probably gone too far on this whole thing, but I like to share the lessons that we learn from the garden when we go from season to season. And I really do think that this particular season, that lesson was just not putting too much on my plate, staying organized, and make sure that I'm being mindful of how I prioritize my time. And next season, I promise to do a little bit better, but at the same time, that's individual. So you always do better each day in some way that's relative to where you're at in your life. BuildASoil, one of our key features is Kaizen. We're always trying to get better. And I have my own personal lessons I'm going through, and it's kind of unique that I get to share them with you and look back at these videos and see where I was at. I hope in 10 years I get to look back and see this one and be like, oh yeah, I remember that. Last but not least, I want to give a shout out to all of our members, because I just think it's so cool that we actually have members, people that are willing to support what we're doing. And so if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, I'm not a member, I mean, don't worry, all this stuff's still gonna be free. If you really want to step up, you're at that point in your life where you want to spend a few bucks and like chip in the hat and see what BuildASoil is doing, we're gonna have some cool features coming out, so it's totally worth it. But if, on the other hand, you're like, I don't do memberships, it's fine. Like, we're gonna do all the videos for free, smoke reports, like all the 10 by 10. We're gonna have some exclusive live streams where I interact, answer questions, right, for people that are members, and some other special things that we'll come up with. But I just wanted to reiterate, since I mentioned the membership because it was new, all the stuff's gonna be free still. It's not like we're gonna take down our videos and start charging for them or something like that. In fact, we want to add more free content. That's what we're about. It's been part of BuildASoil's mission since day one. We're here to help empower organic-minded growers with highest quality products and free high-quality education. Our goal is also to be independent. And when you learn how to grow your own, you learn how to make your own soil, and you learn how these lessons apply to other areas in your life, you truly are independent. You don't have to be dependent on some local dispensary or someone else to answer your questions. But until you get there, I'm happy to be a part and answer all your questions for you. As far as other serendipitous things that have happened, we talked about in the last video, Beefcake D and how serendipitous that was. Well, I bought this North End sauce. This is the real label. This is the barbecue one. My absolute favorite is the Sweet Heat. I ordered a case of it. I probably have the case back here. Yeah, this one is my favorite one. This is the original label. It's the Sweet Heat. I get the 1X, which is their spicier one, and they have like a 2X, maybe even a 3X, I don't know. And it's Carolina Reapers, and I thought it'd be too hot for me, but he puts just an essence in it. It tastes really good. It's one of my favorites, and I've been meal prepping and trying to eat super healthy lately, get some gains, get better in jiu-jitsu, and so a ton of flavor, helps a lot. But I would normally be like, yo, look at this hot sauce. He grows in BuildASoil, and it's a family affair, and like his garden's beautiful, so it comes full circle for me. But then when I ordered this, the homie dropped in there Dominion Seed Company labels, which I thought was epic. Like, I didn't even know they were working together, and I get it, VA don't play. I know they're in the same area, but to have somebody that, like, we're making the Dominion soil recipe, we just grew his seeds. He's a homie, grows the organic way, and then it comes with his label. So anyways, random serendipitous stuff that happens. This is the mango pineapple one. VA don't play. So cool. Just random stuff I wanted to share with you from stuff that happened during season 3. I hope lots more cool stuff happens in season 4. And if you're one of the other people that sent a gift package in at some point and I didn't show it on camera, I'm so sorry. We plan on doing better at that. And we're so grateful. I had never thought we'd have people sending like care packages. So thank you so much for that. From the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate you guys being a part of season 3. Look forward to season 4. Thanks, and we'll see you on the next episode.